Recently, Fujifilm graced me with this sexy beast, the brand new GFX 100 II. And along for the ride were 3 brand new lenses. With this beauty in hand, I embarked on a very fast-paced week of shooting.
Beautiful. Next up.
This camera, like all medium format, is aimed at commercial and fine art photographers, or anyone with 10K burning a hole in their pocket. So what did I do? Well, I pretended that I take photos for a living. Why? Because you don't take racehorses to pony shows. I started off with a fast-paced cycling editorial, then a couple portrait sessions, and finally, a tabletop food shoot for a celebrated Toronto restaurant. I also managed to shoehorn in the new tilt-shift lenses and try out some of the camera's improved video functions. In today's video, we're gonna take you on a journey that was my week with the GFX 100 II and explore all the ups and downs of this significant camera update. Now, an important note first, that this isn't a review per se, more of a features first look. This is a pre-production camera that I was given, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were some very important updates before that camera ships. Now, still, I know that you're probably wondering how well that camera performs, and we may talk a little bit about that. But this is really to answer the question of, is this new update or is this camera system at all worth the investment? And well, I'm certainly not gonna answer that now because we have an adventure to go on first. The GFX 100 needs no intro, says the guy clearly in the middle of his second intro. Fujifilm has already accomplished what no other camera brand has previously been able to do, which is to offer near to full frame power and price in a medium format high resolution camera. To my knowledge, only recently has Hasselblad really been able to catch up, but even with their new 2022 release, the X2D 100C, the Hassi still lacks many of the features and offers less lens choices compared to the now 4 years old GFX 100. In the last 4 years, I have honestly really loved every opportunity I've had to shoot with the GFX 100 or even the GFX 50. I've used the system now enough times to be able to confidently say that I think I understand it very well, and it is by far the most impressive camera system I've ever used from an imaging and ease of use perspective. Despite that, I still see the technology as rather in its infancy. The medium format system is not without its challenges, some of which will be difficult for Fujifilm to surmount in its efforts to win over full-frame enthusiasts. It's not just cost, as physics are also at play. Large sensors require large glass, which makes it an uphill battle for medium format to replace full-frame cameras. I'm not saying it's impossible, but and this is a perfect segue into my first shoot with a group of cyclists. We shot this in the way that you would imagine supplying images for a magazine story, either online or in print. This would most certainly be the camera's biggest challenge, which is capturing fast-moving action. The 100 II features the same subject recognition as all Gen 5 Fujifilm cameras, like the X-H2S and onwards, and this includes motorcycle and bike. How convenient. Did I use this feature? No! Why? Because even though I own an X-H2S, I've never used it. I take portraits and landscapes, man. What do you want? So what I did do is what I always do, which is start with the factory settings and just keep on adjusting. However, when it's fast-paced and the sun is going down, well, there isn't a lot of grace for trial and error. But I took a page from my friend Michael Clark, who has a fantastic article on shooting action with GFX cameras. If you're interested, you'll find a link to that in the description below. First off, it's critical that you switch the camera to continuous autofocus. And from there, I played with wide tracking and area, while also adjusting the sensitivity and responsive settings. I'd say that the camera nailed focus 60% of the time while the riders were in action, which I think is actually amazing considering I had no time to refine the focus setting through testing. And I left out the single most valuable focus feature. Still, my experience in testing many cameras over the years has shown me that reliable autofocus is highly sensitive to lens design. And if you're expecting the much larger medium format glass elements to be as responsive as full frame or APS-C glass, you probably need to reset your expectations. Additionally, not all lenses are created equal. The more distance the focus elements have to move, the less responsive it's going to be. Beyond that, getting great autofocus response is about being really familiar with your subject and having ample experience with your camera. So I'm gonna chalk this one up to like 75% user error. Is the GFX an action photography powerhouse? Well, I can't say for sure. I mean, it really depends on your needs and what you define as action. But if you're about to dump your full-frame camera, maybe not yet. As the sun dropped, I took the opportunity to snag some lifestyle and portrait shots. Now, we're going to talk about low light later in this video, but even without access to the raw files, I was suitably impressed with the dynamic range and the quality of the JPEGs that I was working with. Okay, so speaking of portraits, let's move on. I had one formal studio shoot booked, but before then, a good friend of mine showed up with a beautiful dress, and I asked her if I could take some impromptu photos in my backyard. And this is the first time that I really noticed the claimed 30% improvement in dynamic range. While we're already in indirect light, the camera's 16-bit tonality makes it look as though I had controlled and shaped the light. I've never seen any camera perform quite like this outside of the GFX system, and to my eyes, the improvement in the new camera is palpable. Going into the studio session now with the beautiful Aisha brought heightened excitement where I could fanboy over skin tones. I wanted to just start off with some classic studio portraiture, so Acro's film simulation was a great starting point. I wanted to see what the dynamic range could do without the distraction of color. Again, I was just absolutely delighted with the results. And this really reminded me of one of my favorite photographers, and I would argue one of the world's best at black and white tonality. And this is Dutch photographer Bastiaan Woudt, who gave up his phase 1 for the GFX system 3 years ago. So even without having access to the raw files, I could really appreciate the magic that is large sensors and the ease of working with such a nimble camera. And while we're on the subject of film simulations, the GFX 102 now features a new film simulation called Reala Ace. All film photographers are gonna recognize this. Reala Ace, or just Reala, for those outside of Japan, was a 35mm and a motion picture stock, both of which were received to very wide acclaim. The Reala film stock stood apart because it added a 4th cyan color dye to improve color rendition. I think because they were kind of messing with the curve and the cyan sort of corrected for that. Don't hold me to that though. Compared to Provia, also known as standard in your camera, it is ever so slightly higher contrast, but also lifts the shadows. And color-wise, you're gonna find that it's more akin to Pro Neg standard with a bit more of a rich skin tone. In most instances, you can actually see the clear cyan presence. And I think it's beautiful. But for my own work, I would probably dial back the saturation just a hair. Now, if you'd like to know more about Fujifilm film simulations, well, we did what I believe is one of the most extensive breakdowns in the science of Fujifilm film simulations. Link in the description below if you want to learn more about this. Moving on to the final shoot, which was for Chanticleer Restaurant here in Toronto. They are an absolute culinary institution in this city. The food is not only delicious, but also respectful of a visual artist's pocketbook. It's a dream tabletop gig because the owner, Jacob, beyond being like the nicest guy ever, is also a professional food stylist. And his chef, Diego Reyes, is known for his visionary approach to modern French cuisine. Now for this job, we had a very limited time to shoot. This isn't a studio shoot where you have hours to play around with lighting and food styling. In our case, the cook just simply came in a couple hours early to prepare the dishes, and we shot them as they came out in the restaurant, only a few hours before they opened for service. The sun gods shone upon us, and we had a great south-facing window providing us with the beautiful sunlight. The goal was to shoot fast and then decide on cropping later. The GFX system showed us its power here in a number of ways. One was that incredible 102 megapixel resolution, allowing us to shoot wide and then resize later. In a lay flat shot, I can provide a full wide, but also each dish in remarkable clarity. Another exciting upgrade for the camera is its ability to transmit footage or stills wirelessly to Frame.io. We also did a video on Frame.io if you want to watch that. On all other compatible Fujifilm cameras, this requires a separate transmitter grip. Now, Jacob wanted me to tether, but I didn't come prepared. I didn't have a tether cable with me. So using the restaurant's Wi-Fi, I was able to pair the camera with the Frame.io account and have the photos sent directly to the cloud, which is not just a backup, but also allows us to look at the photos full screen as you would with a tether. Though in this particular case, with the large file sizes and the Wi-Fi speed, there was about a 1-minute delay. Overall, it's a system that adds immense value to a pro photographer workflow and business. And after the shoot, I simply just sent Jacob a link so that he could pull his selects and add notes. This is super efficient because there's no waiting for me to upload or back up files before he could preview them. From a handling perspective, this wasn't a tripod kind of shoot. You just have to move fast and always be flexible with your angles. The ergonomics of this camera beats out really any other medium format body, and the multi-angle screen means that I always have a good eye on the frame, even when I have to hold the camera away from my body. I'm admittedly no expert at shooting tabletop, and for me to walk in with a novice level ability and then walk out with respectable shots says something about the power of the tool and working with a food stylist. Now let's tackle a few other odds and ends about the GFX 100 II, most importantly, video. Or shall I say cinema? Here's where the camera really made a giant leap. The original GFX 100 absolutely produced beautiful 4K video, as long as you didn't touch the camera. The rolling shutter was 5D Mark II level no bueno. But hey, it's a huge sensor, man. What do you expect? I'll tell you what I didn't expect. Outrageously good, low rolling shutter performance. You can actually handhold this camera for video, and that's no small feat. Here it is next to my XH2S, which is an industry leader in rolling shutter performance. And just look at how close the GFX 100 II is to the XH2S, a sensor that is double the size. And in no way did I ever expect this. Now, it's no Alexa 65, but I think this really opens the door to versatile filmmaking. Along with sensor improvements, you now get everything that comes with the XH2, which is up to 8K RAW external and ProRes internal. The image is quite nice, but its quality, of course, like any, is going to be subjective. Compared to the XH2S, its 8K sensor, even in 4K acquisition, shows much greater detail. What I'd be looking for in the final production copy is the risk of large sensors downsampling and how they can sometimes spit out a bit of moire. Shooting at full resolution, such as 8K here, uses as many pixels as available and will most certainly be very clean of artifacts, though it may cost you in media storage. If you want that extra deep depth of field and outrageous detail, then yes, the GFX is your little IMAX camera in your backpack. For me, however, I find softness to be cinematic, and as such, I would continue to prioritize using the XH2S in most cases. The big news as well is the introduction of scopes. Now this is something that I have spoken about on this channel and directly to Fujifilm about for years, and I was in a half-lucid state of disbelief when I was told about it. So to my delight, to find out that the scopes are really well designed and easy to read, man, what a joy. First, they gave us an audible recording beep with the X-T5 and X-T20, and now this, be still my heart. Now, let's talk about low-light performance. It's no secret that large sensors generally excel in low-light scenarios. Now, we've covered this in our popular video on the subject with Michael Clark. There's a link, of course, in the description below if you want to watch that. And just a reminder again that this, the camera we are speaking about, is a pre-production model, so results in production copies can and likely will only be even better. With that out of the way, shooting like a creepy voyeur into my neighbor's dining room, here's what I see. Everything up to 3200 ISO is outstandingly clean. Image noise and degradation should be difficult to tell with the human eye. But if you were to do extreme crops, then yes, after about 800 ISO, it becomes noticeable-ish. Thus, if you're doing large prints for fine art galleries, then 3200 is your comfortable limit. For exhibitor or large-scale retail displays, 6400 is absolutely passable, but I wouldn't recommend exceeding this. Now, it's not about the noise, it's that this is where detail and contrast start to fall apart and your overall resolution commences a bit of a nosedive. The most notable detail loss happens around 12,800, and naturally even more at 25,000. However, if we're exporting to the web without a crop, even without denoiser, it's very good. I don't want to come across as unnecessarily enthusiastic, but I mean, come on. That's impressive. It's really only at the extreme end of 51 and 102,000 that the image suffers significant tonal and detail degradation. And I'd even posit that with AI noise reduction and a bit of work, this could be plenty passable on the gram. And finally, regarding ergonomics and design, I really enjoyed the following upgrades. The improved body texture, which moves away from the hard gray plastic of the original 100. It's fantastic to hold onto and it looks so slick. The LCD top display is jam-packed with amazing information, and the Movies and Stills switch button made going back and forth instantly with no rebooting time. And it also opens up the custom settings to be dedicated to each mode. Additionally, the custom buttons are exquisitely located, and there is a very healthy amount in all the right places. And if I was being honest, going back to my beloved X-H2S after this was a bit of a letdown. Though overall, the size of the GFX 102 made me see how small and light my X-H2S really is. So, perspective is everything. These are the things that really stood out for me in the week that I had this camera. But 6 days and a few shoots, even when you know a camera system well, is just simply not a lot of time. So there is inevitably a lot to still be discovered about this camera, and I'm going to be watching other reviews that happen in the future to see what I may have been missing. And I encourage you to also do the same. So before we wrap up, I did promise that I'd take a look at the 3 new GFX lenses. First up, the 55mm f1.7. Yeah, that's right, f1.7. The entrance pupil on this thing is massive. It was like shooting with a large format 5x7 camera. And you can see it too in my short little 9x16 video of Aisha. Just madness, shallow depth of field. Shooting at 1.7 is way too shallow for anything close up in my opinion, but further away, it's glorious. The crazy large aperture gives you that edge cat-eye bokeh, more commonly seen in vintage optics, while rendering an image with beautiful texture and none of the aberration or contrast issues of legacy glass. This, my friends, is Fujinon optical excellence in full display. Being a bit on the wider side for medium format, the optics geometry though is very, very good, showing nearly no distortion and only slight vignetting wide open. Introduced as well are 2 absolute beast tilt shift, aka perspective control, lenses, though they are not for any fast-paced photography. However, on a lark, I did shoot some cycling shots with them as a fun way to isolate the riders and create a unique image. If you're unfamiliar with tilt shift lenses, they are a staple of architectural photography. In architectural photography, of which I am certainly no expert, having straight lines is the cardinal rule. You can't get straight lines on buildings when standing on the ground looking up. Tilting and shifting the lens plane relative to your sensor remains the best solution. The lenses are also both macro, allowing for excellent perspective control for tabletop, product, and academic archive work. Worth noting, of course, that these lenses, by design, are manual focus. They're also large and in charge and provide an excellent bicep workout. Not something you're going to throw in a satchel for a day at the beach. So is this camera worth the investment? Well, that depends. If you, like Bastiaan Woudt, create large-scale fine art prints that are rich in subtle tonality, or like Michael Clark, you have a range of commercial clients from action to portraiture, then yes, absolutely, unquestionably, I can't think of not only a better value, but a better tool for your job. And also, if you're a dentist or a hedge fund manager with even an inkling of interest in photography, then sure, why not? But you're gonna have to clear some of those Leicas off your shelf to make room. Will it make you a better photographer? Probably not. I also really don't see this camera as something you'd ever use regularly for, say, wildlife, sports, or journalistic endeavors. I've said this many times before. It's medium format, man. For many photographers, you'd still probably want to have at least one full frame or APS-C camera in your arsenal. And I do think in this instance that the X-H2S or the X-H2 provides a great companion camera that will really help to cover all your bases. All the while, its new cinema tools and improved readout speeds are really something special, and now make this camera a real cinematic large format contender. For everyone else, while you may not be able to find the funds in your bank, I hope you find a way to simply try this camera somehow. If you love photography, I think using the GFX is a special experience that everybody deserves to try at least once. And whammo-bammo, my friends, that is it. Thank you for sticking around, and thank you to all the people who I shot this past week, and thank you to our friends at Fujifilm for giving us this incredible early access for not a review. As always, please subscribe to this channel for more wildly insightful and entertaining content like this, and comment in the comment section below because you know why. For me, for now, I'm out. Peace.
And she gon' work that right. I'ma mess around and drown when she drop that down. No more phone me blowing up. I like not right now. Oh, I swear that she ain't nice the way she worked that mouth. Whoa.